I've always loved pies. Actually, you're starting to see some better pies, aren't you, all of a sudden? This is a pot pie. Now, a pot pie is one where the pastry's only on the top. You could, of course, make it into one where you put the pastry all the way around, but as long as the pastry is actually part of the pie itself, I think it's fine. That's the pot pie. You understand what I'm talking about? Of course you do. Of course you do. Anyway, you will see what I'm talking about. I'm not mad on those pies. You know, you go to restaurants sometimes and they have a pie and they've just got a slab of pastry which they've pre-cooked and they just plop it on the top. Don't like that. Defeats the purpose, doesn't it? Because the whole thing about a pie is the idea being putting the pastry on top or around or whatever. It's to keep all the juices in, make it very juicy and tender and all those good things. So to start off with, some olive oil and a good dollop of butter. So I've got some mushrooms, which I've got about 8 medium to large mushrooms, which I've just sliced, 3 rashers of bacon and 1 onion. And we'll just put all those in a pot or a pan, or in this case, a deep wok, whatever you feel like. Whatever takes your fancy. All right. And then we'll just saute that. Now, these have to be reasonably tender. You don't want them to get coloured because that then sort of changes the idea, because this is actually a creamy pie, a cream sauce, so therefore you don't want the veggies coloured, because otherwise it sort of makes it dirty, doesn't it? Makes it dirty cream. All right, so we'll just keep an eye on this and just cook it until they're tender. About 5 minutes, I reckon. All right, this is looking good. Now we add some flour. Now this is the thickening agent. I know I keep harping on about it, but it's better to thicken it now than later, because what happens when you add it later, you know, even corn flour, when you add it later, always tastes of flour, doesn't it? So if you do it now and you cook it, you find, and the other thing is, I know you're sitting at home and say, my God, he's making a lot for one. Well, what I do with this, I have to be honest, is I freeze quite a bit of it, because it is a beautiful mix, and it doesn't necessarily have to be just made into a pie. This is what my mother used to call a fricassee. So you can have a fricassee and serve it on rice or even mash. So just have it in the freezer, stick it in your microwave, and you've got a delightful fricassee. Or you can make a pie again. I don't mind. But it's just a bit of a shame not to do a decent amount, because it freezes brilliantly. All right, so just keep an eye on this. We don't want this to burn now that it's got the flour in. So all we're trying to do is cook that flour, which is ready. So what we will now add is some low salt chicken stock, about half a litre to start. Just turn that up a little. We'll add a bit more as we go along, but I will also add a little bit of pepper and a little bit of salt. We can always add more. As I said, it's low salt packet chicken stock, so we can add some salt. Right, we're just going to kick that. We're just going to cook that until it's reasonably thick. But as I said, we'll add some more stock as we go along. But just don't add it all at once, because what happens then, everything just boils. And when it boils, it toughens. So I've got some parsley to go on. I've got all this chicken here, which is chicken thighs. I've got half a dozen chicken thighs, which I just got from my chicken supplier, free range of course. And I asked for them to be skinless and boneless. And then I just chop them up. Thighs are the best, because thighs will end up more tender, whereas a breast, you can use it, but a breast you have to be more careful because it can toughen up. Turn that up a bit and we will cook that 10 or 15 minutes, adding some more stock, and last but not least we will throw in that chicken and cook that for the last 5 minutes. Don't cook the chicken for too long because it doesn't need it, because I've cubed it, so about 5 minutes. But I do want it to get really nice and thick when you're making a pie. You want it thick, because it will thin down a little in the pie dish itself. Perfect. Oh, that's nice. Really is nice. Of course it is. I shouldn't sound surprised, should I? Now, just a sheet of pastry. Now you can do 1 or 2, I don't mind. I'm only going to do 1 because this is for 1, and I'm going to keep the rest, as I said, and use it later on. So what you do is put your bowl or plate or dish or whatever you've got on the pastry and cut around it, leaving a little bit of a lid, or a lip. It is actually not a lid, Ian. Now make sure you get plenty of the filling in it, so it's not just sauce. Right, now what we need is some egg wash, which is just 1 egg. And about 1/4 cup of milk. And then all we do is grab a fork and just beat it up. Just paint it around the edge of the bowl, and then we put the pastry on top and we press the edge down and paint the lot of it. Now you can just throw it in like this if you like, or you can put it in a tray. The tray's easier because it's easier to get out, isn't it? So into the oven, about 180 degrees, fairly high up. And serve it with something simple. I reckon some green beans would be nice. All right, I put some beans in there, just some salted water, quite a bit of it. I could have done with a bigger pot, I couldn't find one, but anyway, just as long as it's rapidly boiling, which it is. Let's have a look at our pie. Oh, that looks all right, doesn't it? That looks rather nice, actually. Now, our beans will take a second or two more. I want them nice and crisp and fresh, but you don't want them raw. So while that's happening, I just put that chicken mix into these. And what I'll then do is put the name, because I'm putting these in the freezer. Chicken, bacon, and mushroom. What's the date? What's the date, James? Had no idea. I think it's about the 1st. That'll do us pretty good. 1st of the 11th, 17. I'll put that on. You don't need to, because 3 months is about all. I always put the date on because what happens is you put things in the freezer and of course they all look the same for a start and you forget how long they've been there. And at the risk of repeating myself, pie or fricassee, whatever you like. But when you're making something like that, it just seems such a waste to just make enough for one, even though I'm obsessed about not wasting anything. So you don't put it to the back of the fridge. If you're going to keep something, you put it in your freezer. Right, our beans, nice and crisp, but they are cooked, which is very important. Good dollop of butter. You could put olive oil on if you like, but I think beans always need butter. That's just me. A little bit of salt, just toss them around. Any green veggie you do. I love beans, so that'll do me, but you certainly, in season, some nice peas would be lovely with this. And to go with that, now I normally would drink Chardonnay with that, but I tried this with this lovely Cullen Semillon Sauvignon Blanc from Margaret River, and I tried a pie with that the other day with a creamy sauce, because the cream is what you sort of think to match. And this went beautifully with it. Very special wine. Not terribly cheap, but very special. And I've got a half bottle too, which is nice. Oh yes, that'll go really, really well. So, Semillon Sauvignon Blanc from Margaret River, a lovely bacon, mushroom and chicken pie, and some green beans on the side. Everything is all right with life.